Welcome back to Infowars Nightly News. I'm your host, Alex Jones. And all week we've been focusing in on vaccines because all over the United States, but also in other parts of the world like Mexico, governments are now moving towards forced inoculation of children without parental consent. That bill has now passed the House and Senate in California and is on Governor Brown's desk. So I wanted to go back and look at some of the big stories we've seen the last few years concerning vaccines, the H1N1 for flu, Gardasil now being a big national story, with Rick Perry being attacked by all the other Republican candidates, saying that he was wrong to have attempted that. This is a big breakthrough, really showing that Americans and people all over the world are starting to wake up to the fraud, to the danger, to the carnage that is Big Pharma and the vaccine industry. So they're striking back boldly and launching all sorts of hoaxes, saying nobody's been hurt by Gardasil, despite the fact that the CDC's own adverse reaction report says 18 to 20 plus thousand, depending on what report you look at, despite the fact that it's well known Gardasil has resulted in deaths. And joining us to talk about this is author, filmmaker, medical doctor Sherri Tenpenny. Her new DVD film is out, Flu and Flu Vaccines, What's Coming Through the Needle. By the way, it's available at Infowars.com if you'd like to support our work that we're doing here. I wanted to talk to Dr. Sherri Tenpenny because she's probably the most respected and well-known medical doctor out there, breaking down exactly what's happening with these vaccines that are being pushed on us. And she was absolutely accurate when it came to breaking down the carnage that was going to be caused by the H1N1 shot for the flu back in 2009. Doc, it's great to have you here with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Alex. Thanks for asking me.
Where do you want to start first? The new contaminants in the Gardasil, the move for forced inoculations without parental consent, or the fact that in 2009, in hindsight, we learned that you were absolutely on target with what that was going to do?
Well, it's all in the news, isn't it? And it's one thing after another these days, because what you said was exactly right. There are millions and millions of people that are now waking up and looking around, and every single time one of these events happen, whether it was bird flu in 2005, whether it was swine flu in 2009, and then the H1N1, all the difficulties that we had when we saw the H1N1 given to young children and also to pregnant women. And now we've got this whole thing with Gardasil and showing that we've got a biohazard contaminant that's been documented that from samples that have been tested from 5 countries in several different states. And the FDA says that this recombinant HPV, which has been bound to aluminum, so we know that this was actively engaged, is a biohazard. And so it seems like every single time that something like this comes up, many millions more parents wake up, start looking around and saying, what? I should start questioning vaccines. And they start with something very simple, like maybe reading a package insert. They start from there and say, if I can't pronounce it, I don't know what it is, I don't want it injected into me or my children.
Well, if you read the package inserts for H1N1, regular flu shot, and others, it says neurological disorders, cancer, brain damage, convulsions. But then you turn on the news and they've got vaccine company spokespeople not telling you that they work for them or on their payroll, saying no one's ever been hurt by a vaccine. Are we seeing more and more desperate lying because they're scared?
I believe that's true. And every time I hear Dr. Nancy Snyderman on the news talking about how safe and effective vaccines are, trying to assure all of the scared little parents out there, and what she's been saying has been absolutely false. She's actually been giving bad and wrong information. And instead of promoting the Gardasil vaccine for young girls, because now we're trying to give it to young girls and boys starting at 9 years of age, the clinical trials were actually done on 16 to 24-year-olds, not on little girls. We have no idea how long this is going to last. We know there's 100 different HPV strains, 15 of which have been associated with cancer. The vaccine only covers 2, and we have no idea of whether this vaccine is going to have any impact on cervical cancer at all when these girls get to be 30 to 40 years of age. What she should be, what Dr. Nancy Snyderman should be promoting is that young girls need to be getting regular pap smears, and that has been shown forever to be the most effective way and the most cost-effective way of preventing cervical cancer for the long run.
Well, without getting too graphic, I'm no doctor, but I went and read the insert when the Gardasil first came out, and it said there on the insert, this is not even proven to actually protect you from the cancer. And then even in the trials, we saw the autoimmune problems, the convulsions, the bleeding, people becoming paralyzed. And then lo and behold, now there's scientists just in the news a few days ago were saying this DNA, the virus more whole than we first thought, bound to the aluminum. This is the exact type of thing that would cause an autoimmune disease like lupus. And I heard you hinting at the fact that it had been actively bound. I know they looked at multiple sub-manufacturers of this Gardasil and found that this had accidentally happened, just like the UN accidentally, with the tetanus shot, had female hormone bound to it to cause miscarriages in women. Doc, do you think this is being done on purpose and this vaccine could have some other use in it than we're being told?
Well, certainly. I mean, it certainly could, Alex, because one of the other ingredients in the Gardasil vaccine is polysorbate 80. Polysorbate 80 is a preservative that they use in things like ice cream as a stabilizer, and it has been shown to cause infertility in female mice, and it causes testicular atrophy in male mice. And this is in the medical literature. People aren't making this up. And they also know that repeated doses of polysorbate 80 can lead to anaphylactic shock. Polysorbate 80 is also in the DTP vaccine, the DTaP, which they are now pushing on pregnant women for them to get the DTaP vaccine. So it's endless. And I want to go back and address what you said about, are they pushing back very strongly? Of course they are, because you cannot make a living, you cannot make an $800 billion a year industry on the backs of unvaccinated, healthy children. Most children who are unvaccinated are rarely sick. They may get the occasional cold or flu or a little bit of a fever, but it comes and goes. And so they are not chronically lifetime ill.
Well, it's like the Amish. The epidemic of autism is unknown in their population.
That's correct. And in many other populations, I mean, what we've been pushing for, you and I and all of us who are big vaccine advocates, what we've been pushing for more than a decade, is for the CDC to finally do the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated study. It seems as though at some point we're going to have to just raise the money and do it ourselves, because the CDC doesn't want to know the answer. They don't want to see a whole bunch of unvaccinated kids who never miss school, are on no chronic daily medications, who are doing extraordinarily well, never get sick. They do not want to stand that up against a bunch of vaccinated kids who are on a whole bunch of medications and have a lifetime worth of injuries.
Well, doctor, what you pointed out back in 2009, out of the gates, you said, look, from previous studies, we know that when you take this H1N1 flu shot, or one that's similar, it's going to reduce your regular immunity to regular flu. And then they had the big Canadian mainline study that showed, what was it, a doubling in your chances of getting regular seasonal flu if you took the H1N1. And then I remember it was you and others that discovered that they were admitting that they might have had a plan previously to put simulants in the previous year's vaccine. And there's a lot of evidence they were actually triggering this H1N1 program. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can, Alex, and it's also the fact that it does lower the immune system, and you can get the flu shot and still get sick. I've looked back, and I talk about this in the flu DVD that is now available through Infowars, is that I've looked at the data from the CDC over the last 11 years, and every year there are testing sites where they take nasal swabs and they send them to the CDC, and they say, okay, you've got all these flu-like symptoms. What is causing you to be sick? Is it influenza, or is it some other bug? Because the CDC says the reason you have to get annual flu shots is because the antibodies wear off, and you have to have an exact match. The one that's in the flu shot has to match the one that's in circulation in order to keep you from getting sick. The amount of people who actually get sick from the flu, that it matches what's in the flu shot over the last 11 years, has been less than 13%. So if the flu shot works at all, which I don't think that it does, in fact I know it doesn't, it will only match 13% of the time. So you take on all the risk of the flu, the flu shot, all of its ingredients, the fact you can get Guillain-Barré, you can have all sorts of immunosuppressive types of things that can happen from a flu shot, and you can still get the flu anyways. It's absolutely not worth it. And the multi-dose flu shots that they start giving at children from 6 months of age, the multi-dose flu shots still have mercury in them.
Wow. And while you're talking, we're playing some video over it of your documentary presentation, flu and flu vaccines, what's coming through the needle. I want to talk to you before we end this discussion about that. But Dr. Tenpenny, we've discovered Rockefeller Foundation documents. Perhaps we'll put some up while you're speaking, from 1966, 68, saying we need to develop sterilants hidden in vaccines. So basically piggybacking or Trojan horsing. Then we have the report from 85 where they say this is wonderful. We've actually discovered it. We're going into the implementation phase. And then, as you know, the UN got caught in the mid-90s in Africa and Asia, India and places, with the tetanus shots that really had a sterilant in them. Well, not really even a sterilant. It caused women to have violent miscarriages in the second trimester. And I know you're a doctor. You just focus on the effects of these. But in the final equation, they know what they're doing. And this is more than just profit making. This is really a medical tyranny from my research. And I think that's really evidenced by the fact that they, on national news over the weekend, put frontmen for Merck up on all the major news shows. It was bombarding the population, saying not one person's been hurt by Gardasil, and issuing a fake $10,000 challenge at Congresswoman Michele Bachmann, who followed Ron Paul's lead and raised the issue to Rick Perry. I mean, that's amazing, because all we did was go to the CDC's own report, and we had a press release from a few months ago. It was 17,000. I was corrected yesterday. It's actually 22,000 now. It's grown in just a few months. And they admitted deaths, Guillain-Barré, all on their own paperwork, which we'll show again in a moment. We just showed the Rockefeller Foundation documents. I mean, this is bold hoaxing. And so clearly they know what they're doing.
How I always try to explain that to people, Alex, that maybe can't get their head around that, is I always refer to Enron and Arthur Andersen. I mean, who would have ever thought one of the big 8 accounting firms would have just completely imploded and gone away? Who would have ever thought that one of the top, Fortune 200 companies in this country would have just blown up and gone away, who had tens of thousands of employees? It was the 8 or 10 rotten apples at the top that knew all along. And I believe, it's my personal belief that that's the way it is inside of the vaccine industry. And when you get big food, big pharma, and big oil together that control and own everything, they don't like the population to be where it is. I think that there's some issues with that. I also truly believe that the vaccine industry is the bedrock of the entire pharmaceutical industry, the bedrock. That is why they are fighting this so hard. Because if you took out all of those vaccines, which, by the way, there are 330 vaccines in development right now, 96 about to be approved, targeted towards adolescents and adults. So if parents think that, who are listening to this, say, oh, my kids are all grown up, I don't have to worry about that anymore, guess again. They're coming after you. And
did you see the doctor on the news this weekend, one of their pushers? I forget his name. We've got it in the clips. We played it earlier in the week. He said you could give a baby 10,000 vaccines at once.
Yeah, that was Paul Offit, that was a paper that came out in 2003, and I actually wrote a rebuttal to that back in 2003, where he said that you could take 10,000 vaccine antigens all at the same time, and it's like, okay, Paul Offit, roll up your sleeve. Just let's do it to you. Let's see what happens to your health.
But isn't this going to destroy them in the end when it gets so obvious? We're now 1 in 36 in South Korea have autism, where you go to a movie theater and maybe 20% of the kids in there are behaving like zombies. I mean, clearly this is an environmental situation. They can't cover it up forever. And as you just alluded to, they have hundreds of vaccines coming down the pipeline that they want to get government to mandate we take. And as I know you said 2 years ago, over and over again, you said, Alex, people are waking up. They used to just sell this through soft power and trick everybody. You said they're going to try to force it. And that brings me to one of the final points. As you know, the bill has passed the House and Senate in California, most populous state. 36 million people or whatever it is, 37 million. It's gone to Brown's desk. He's saying he's going to sign it to inject the kids without parental consent. I mean, my God.